Hello there ladies and gentlemen, I'm Paul TX14 Walsh, welcoming you to an all new World of Warships gameplay today on our channel. In this episode I'll be continuing from where we left off earlier this week, analysing another gameplay featuring the Tier 10 American heavy cruiser known as the Des Moines. To recap, this series of gameplays serves to illustrate my preferred playstyle with the Des Moines in terms of both its advantages and disadvantages. In the first episode, a link to which is available in the top right corner of your screen as displayed now, I firstly summarised my preferred playstyle, which is one based around aggression and getting the most out of the damage per minute or DPM associated with the ship's main batteries. Secondly, outlined my choice of upgrades and captain skills to support this playstyle. And thirdly, demonstrated the successful application of said playstyle with an example gameplay. By contrast, today's gameplay, a domination match on the map Mountain Range, is going to showcase an unsuccessful application of my aggressive playstyle. As I analyse the gameplay, I recommend looking out for the following disadvantages being exhibited. Number 1. The potential to overextend through being too aggressive early in the match, placing my ship in an awkward position which I will need to manage. Number 2. That whilst not explicitly stated, being aggressive requires the support of my team. If that support is not available, then it can put my ship's survivability at risk. And number 3. Such a playstyle can demand going all in, granting polarised results. In some cases I can do mass damage to the enemy team. Alternatively, I can take huge damage for diminishing returns. With items to look out for covered, let us get into the gameplay. As we load into the game, the main thing on my mind right now is that in my experience, the Mountain Range map is one focused around open water engagements if you are not playing on the objective. The idea here being that when we look at the minimap, we'll see the set of land masses that come down the western side of Objective Bravo, cutting off one side of the map from the other. You've got the land masses on the western side of Objective Alpha and those dotted in and around Objective Charlie. And with the fact we've constricted our gun range to 15.8 kilometers, in an open water scenario an enemy destroyer could quite effectively sit at a distance of 10.2 to 10.4 kilometers from us in order to spot us, while our detectability by sea being 10.6 kilometers, and conversely we cannot spot them using our radar, which only extends out to 9.9 kilometers. Then an enemy cruiser or battleship with superior gun range that extends beyond 15.8 kilometers could sit at distance and gradually whittle our health down, and that would be to great frustration as we'd have no means of being able to reverse the situation unless we head for cover. Alternatively we push into the enemy team and we're forced into that engagement. We could of course retreat, but in the process that does mean we've got the high likelihood, until we get behind our teammates, of taking considerable damage. So instead, what I'm having to do immediately here is push towards the closest objective and head towards the land masses, and that is Objective Charlie here, which is the one with the greatest number of land masses and the ones that I feel I can push out of most confidently. As I make my way towards Charlie, looking at the team positioning, one thing I've noticed, there's only 2 destroyers aside. Our Chunmu's going towards Objective Alpha, our Z-52 towards Objective Bravo. That means for Objective Charlie, one of the cruisers, whether it be myself, our fellow Des Moines or our Neptune, will need to act as the point man pushing into Objective Charlie. And I'm very happy to do that, but I'll need to be cautious in how I approach it, because as I said previously, the armour of the Des Moines is not going to hold up unless you angle it effectively. And therefore, getting in towards Objective Charlie, I'll need to be careful as I approach the landmass, which will come off to our starboard side, and creep round to know what's going to lie ahead. And I'm about to be very briefly spotted, which is unfortunate because what it will tell the enemy team, despite the fact I probably didn't render in on their screens, is the fact that a Des Moines is heading towards Objective Charlie and they're currently located off towards the northwestern side of that objective. So as I make my way round, closing in on the landmass first, I'll need to tiptoe my way round to understand where the enemy destroyer could be. Now keep an eye on the progress of the capture of Objective Bravo. If that stops, I know that the enemy Yu Yang, or the enemy Fletcher being based in Objective Alpha at this point, I'll know that the enemy Yu Yang is in Objective Bravo. If the progress continues and I'm not spotted as I make my way around looking into Objective Charlie, then I have a confident feeling that the enemy destroyer must be located south of Objective Bravo for the time being, or in the worst case scenario, southeast of it, meaning as I push around, I'll be spotted by the Yu Yang. Now, this isn't too much of a problem because what it means is I can now confidently push into Charlie. It's not being taken, so the Yu Yang cannot be here, and I've got the support, or at least I'm reading I've got the support of our Friedrich de Grosser, our Des Moines and our Neptune right behind me. So here I go, I'm about to go charging forward. And as I make my way forward and Objective Bravo is taken, what I'm expecting perhaps here is that our Z-52 can combine and cut across in order to set up what may be a crossfire if the Yu Yang makes their way this way. Or at least the Z-52's got centre map control for the time being and can provide that outward vision, the radial vision from the centre of the map. In going forward here, I have to be aware of the fact I'm now going to be pushing between two sets of the enemy fleet, those who decide to come along the southern approach to Charlie and those based off towards the southern side of Bravo, and I'll need to angle my ship between two sets of the enemy fleet appropriately. I immediately turn my attention towards the enemy Yu Yang, who has been briefly spotted by a Z-52, who's gone to smoke and is most likely using the hydroacoustic consumable on their ship in order to spot them out of the smoke. At least that's what I assume they're doing. But as I make my way forward right now, I have to focus my attention towards the Seattle as the Yu Yang gradually falls out of firing angle, or the landmass off to my starboard side, and I can see that the Seattle has exposed a considerable amount of their side armour. But unfortunately I haven't read into this appropriately. The fact they are reversing mean I'm not able to punish them lethally, and instead very shortly we'll see the diminishing returns of my armour piercing shells as the Seattle starts to angle appropriately, even though I do remove one of their turrets for a brief period of time. But in going forward, what you'll see now is I actually angle my ship against the enemy ships that are targeting me on both sides, the starboard side, i.e. towards the starboard bow, and also towards the port bow. The idea being that I'm not going to get ripped apart, I'm going to make the most of the armour and in return maximise the damage I deal. Ripping into the Seattle, but then I notice the Buffalo, who's overextended around the landmass they were trying to use to conceal their position. And with that wonderful bit of broadside showing, even if it's angled, these lovely armour piercing shells will rip right through that, as we're now seeing. And in return, whilst a lot of high explosive is coming in, I'm not losing too much health right now, and any armour piercing that is coming in is being limited in the amount of penetration it can achieve, while the fact I've got my ship angled between the two sets of enemy ships. And I now start to go forward, I'm ready to trade, and you'll know I switched on my radar here, and this is quite important, because remember, when an enemy ship is spotted, it takes a small period of time for them to render in on screen, and I did not want to get caught out by the fact I was rendered in on the Buffalo screen in pushing around the landmass, because I was spotted by the enemy Richelieu having fired previously, or the enemy Yu Yang in the centre of the map, and instead I turned on my radar to have the Buffalo rendered in on my screen, and therefore we could trade at the same time. I took 3,300 damage, they lost the rest of their health and sank to the bottom of the deep blue sea. And if you're wondering at this point why I slowed down as I made my way through Charlie, increasing the amount of damage I would take, it was to bait the enemy Yu Yang's torpedoes, potentially. The idea being that I tried to get them to torpedo my position in the centre of objective Charlie, and then quickly rush forward towards the landmass that heads out towards the southwestern side of the objective. But now having pushed so far forward and traded a good amount of health, I've got a problem. Which is, I've pushed so far forward that now I'm actually cut off from my teammates behind. But before we come on to that fully, let me just point out, remember what I said in the first gameplay about extending my AA range out to the maximum of 7.2 kilometers? Well, that means the catapult fighter that the Bismarck's just thrown up from behind the landmass off to my port side, I can down the aircraft before it continuously spots me for an extended period of time. Very shortly the aircraft is going to go down and I'll be no longer detected by it. But unfortunately here I am being detected by an enemy ship of some description, and I get the feeling it's the Yu Yang briefly. Now they're not spotting me, I'm being spotted by a hydroacoustic search, and now that I've opened fire of my guns, it's the Yu Yang once again. And that tells me that they're probably making their way through the centre of Bravo right now, considering heading towards Objective Alpha, because I became despotted for a brief period of time. I mean, they must be moving westwards, alternatively northwestwards, away from my ship. So instead, what I can start to do is try and think of how I'm going to play this situation out, because I'm between a rock and two battleships, Richelieu off to one side and the Bismarck coming up behind. And here I make the fatal error. Because what I'm thinking at this point, at some point along the line, my teammates who are north of Charlie right now would come down to help push through this Bismarck who's charging forward. But instead, what's actually happening is the fact, because I've extended beyond the support capabilities of my teammates right now, because they're not coming any further through Charlie or even pushing through into Bravo, it means that I have to go toe-to-toe in a broadside engagement against the Bismarck. Now I am effectively angling against it for the time being, but here, because I'm quite concerned with the fact that the secondaries of the Bismarck will really start to rip into my health in a long duration engagement, I actually start to over-angle my ship and expose more of my angled broadside, enough for the armour piercing shells of the Bismarck's 380mm guns to get successful penetrations against my ship. And that means when the Bismarck's about to go down, they fire one last salvo against me, and whilst it doesn't achieve any citadels, it does achieve 14,000 damage approximately against my ship, and therefore I've lost a lot of health. And this is where we come on to the point of going all in. I've had to go all in order to get into this position, which has led to taking down of two enemy ships and a lot of damage being dealt. And on top of that, 54,000 spotting damage dealt so far. But the downside of this is now I have to really think about what I'm going to do for the rest of the game. Not that I'd be thinking in the first instance, but now what I've got to realise is if I get hit by one enemy torpedo, well, the 7% torpedo damage reduction, it's very likely at this current point in time I will be eliminated from the game. by the deep water torpedoes of the Yu Yang, for example. And even if I heal, my health's only going to get to the region of, say, the 50% mark, say 25,000, and therefore I need to take one torpedo here, and that will put me on a very critical state of health. Now I only take 1 or 2 salvos from the enemy team that are well aimed in order to rip me out of the game. So I can no longer afford to be as aggressive. I'm actually going to have to rely very heavily on my team now in order to press the situation. So what I'm doing here is I'm just giving myself time to get my hill consumable ready to go again, and at the same time trying to think how I can reposition my ship in order to annoy the enemy team. And what I decided to do is poke myself out from behind the landmass here to try and get some high explosive salvos into the reach view. The idea being that I can try and set some fires with the base 14% fire chance being exhibited. The downside of this, of course, is that when I do go to open fire, I'm running the risk of being spotted, and I've even overextended a little bit too much here to be spotted by the reach view by base. But as I start to reverse and they turn their guns towards me, and I do get behind the concealment of the landmass to my port side, I'm actually being spotted still, I believe, by the enemy Yu Yang, and that means they're still hanging somewhere in Objective Bravo off to the western side of it, because remember, I wasn't being spotted by them before I opened fire. And the Seattle and the enemy team's also throwing a small salvo towards us, nothing to really worry about. It's a long range one, we may be able to dodge a good chunk of it because they're slow shells, and we take a single hit that does no actual damage. Now here I'm waiting for the reset on my detectability to see whether the Yu Yang is definitely heading off towards the western side of Bravo. And as we get the reset, we're no longer detected, and the fact I've actually been set on fire by the Seattle, well played to them, is actually giving me more information. The Yu Yang must be somewhere in the centre of the map off to the west of Bravo, otherwise we'd be definitely spotted by them as they're in Objective Bravo right now. And it may be the case that our friendly Gascon is actually pushing the Yu Yang further and further towards Objective Alpha. Now in return, again, with the Montana sending up a catapult fighter, this comes onto the concept of the AA range being able to down the enemy aircraft rather rapidly with the lovely AA suite of the Des Moines. We down it, and that means we're no longer going to be spotted by that catapult aircraft, and because we open fire again against the Seattle, and I'm no longer being spotted, it means the Yu Yang has most definitely drifted further and further west of Objective Bravo now, and because we're behind the landmass, no other ship can be spotting us, so that gives us an idea there's no destroyer threat or deep water torpedo threat for the time being. Now as I'm making my way out towards the southeastern corner of the map, what I'm thinking here is if I can't expect my team to be able to push into Objective Bravo because they're just being hesitant to do so, not a criticism of them, but I'm having to state it from my opinion of what I'm seeing as I play the game, then I must realise, okay, well how can I set up a potential crossfire? How can I punish these enemy battleships that are really anchoring our team down right now and cause them not to want to push any further forward into Bravo or even push south of Objective Charlie, preferably southwestern and turn up into Bravo if it's going to be the worst case scenario. Now to do so, what I decided to do is actually push out towards the southeastern corner of the map, and I want to catch these enemy ships on a side where they're going to have to rotate their guns fully to aim at me. And what you'll notice I'll do, I'll try and bait the attention of the reach view once again, because I'm quite confident that their guns are not too accurate, and the fact that if I angle my ship against their rather low caliber guns, I can bounce the incoming shells or limit considerably the amount of damage I'm going to take. I'll set a fire in the reach view, and with the enemy Montana exposing a broadside to me right now, I want to try and punish the upper belt armour and the superstructure, because if I get a number of penetrations, that enemy battleship is going to fall very quickly, bringing to bear our DPM at a decent range here. And that's where Des Moines works very nicely on the playstyle that I've gone for. The idea that if I'm able to get an enemy ship into a punishing position, I can very quickly help to down them. Albeit sometimes dispersion isn't always going to work out, but there it does as the Montana goes down to our sustained fire, and in return the reach view opens fire on us, and with our angling and the fact that guns are not too accurate, we're not hit by any shells, so they completely miss us, and now we're tossing the high explosive once again to try and get some fire damage on them. We want to bleed their health down as well as hit the raw alpha strike, because what has to be considered is the fact that the alpha of our high explosive shells is a maximum 2800, which is not too impressive compared to say our Japanese counterpart, the Zhao at tier 10, which has considerably more high explosive alpha damage. But in return we're able to build up the damage through the fire set and the DPM over time. Our angling means we only take 3,500 damage in return, and the damage we're doing is building up dramatically. And this reach view over time is going to go down, and we're having to angle here so only our rear turret can fire, while the downsides of Des Moines in terms of its turret positioning, even though you've got half decent firing angles in my opinion. And we continue to drop the shells in, another fire set, and that reach view is pretty much on its last legs. Now you know I'm starting to take some incoming fire from the centre west side of the map. I'm not sure what ship hit me, but I know that I've got to start thinking about taking that incoming fire. And with the fire on the bow of the reach view finishing them off for the game, it means that I can now turn my ship around. But again, this poses a problem in the concept of having to go all in earlier on, because we're now heading towards the final 25% of the game, and in the opening 50%, I decided to chuck away a considerable amount of health. I made the conscious decision to go all in against the landmass in grid square what was Golf 8, and it has paid off. It's meant that we've downed 4 ships in total with the assistance of our team, But at the same time, it means now I have to actually try and take a reserve role. I have to sit further back. But I can't do that as such because I haven't got the gun range to do it. Now, if I had the spotter aircraft consumable, or alternatively I had the range boost upgrade, I would potentially be able to start lobbing shells against the enemy Musashi right now. And that means I could start setting fires, I could start considering to burn down their health pool. But because I've taken away the long distance aspect of my guns, and I'm focusing on that medium to short range, I'm useless to my team right now, and this is hurting my team in terms of their prospects of being able to turn this game around, because we have 5 ships to the enemy's 6 right now, and this is quite even still as we're all pushing in towards Objective Bravo as a consolidated group. Albeit the fact the enemy teams are actually wrapping around us with their Yu-Yang going north of our team means that we're going to get caught in the crossfire of shells and torpedoes, which is not too good. Now as we open fire with our high explosive, finally getting the Musashi in range, we have to notice the amount of time we have on the target is constricted, and with our team starting to fall now or head towards their last legs in terms of some of the ships, this really does hurt our ability to be able to sustain this damage for a long period of time. So instead I have to start looking for a cover position in order to protect my own remaining health, which is 20,000, so not too much, less than half health. And I notice the enemy Bismarck, which is isolated from the rest of the group. And what it means is I can use the landmass, which is going to be coming up on my starboard side, in order to hide the position of my ship, and in return continuously dump fire on them. Actually, my apologies, it's the left hand side of the ship, so it's the port side. As the landmass is coming up on the port side now, we angle in appropriately and use the 2 front guns in order to just gradually burn down the health pool of the Bismarck. Switching to armour piercing for a limited period of time just to see if we can get some better results, but then again, they're not showing any broadside, and as we can see here, they start to turn. I think they're overturned to expose the broadside, but then they're angling appropriate against my incoming shells, and it means that I'm not able to do any considerable damage with armour piercing. I have to switch back to the high explosive and go for the raw alpha strike, and on top of that, the fires that I can set in order to burn down the health. And bring it all together here, we'll see that health does go down over time, but it's not a case that we can quickly get them out of the game, and we have to work with our Des Moines off to our starboard side in order to help try and bring down this Bismarck as quickly as possible, as we're roughly on the same health, us and our friendly Des Moines, and it's just a case of continuing to dump the fire in and hopefully get this enemy battleship out of the game. Now I've got a hydroacoustic search on here just in case any torpedoes at long range are coming charging in, but with the Yu-Yang being a considerable distance off already, I have the feeling that if they're throwing torpedoes towards us, it's going to be towards our friendly Des Moines rather than our own ship, and therefore they're not going to be in range of our ship. And we continue to dump in the shells, finally getting the fire after a period. But with that, now it's only us and our friendly Des Moines, and we've got a large number of enemy ships coming up from what would be the western side of Objective Bravo. And if we can get this Bismarck out of the game, we still have the Yu-Yang situated up in the north, so it's not looking good even if we can get this battleship out of the game, because we are stuck between 2 sets of enemy ships. With angled appropriately, we take no damage as a result of that armour piercing salvo from the Bismarck. Again, they cannot overmatch our bow armour, and now with their broadside exposed, we get some nice armour piercing penetrations, and it looks as our friendly Des Moines also realising this and ripping into them, and that enemy Bismarck is about to fall. Now they're gone to the guns of our friendly Des Moines. We hope that our Des Moines is able to push further north to chase down the Yu-Yang, albeit it's going to be quite a difficult endeavour because the Yu-Yang can simply outrun them and hold them at range, keeping them spotted in return not being spotted. And now I have to think about how can I just try to salvage a personal result out of this, because this game is practically over. There is no way of coming back. And to do side to side, you know what, I'm just going to creep slightly forward here, let the enemy ships that are coming from the western side of the map through Bravo get a bit closer, potentially the enemy Fletcher, and I want them to get close enough so that way they're not able to run away, and it really is a case of just trading based on DPM, something which I can do in the Des Moines because I've got the high fire rate. Even with the enemy Worcester having quite a high fire rate and at 6-inch guns, and there being an enemy Des Moines, I get the feeling I can at least match them for fire rate and definitely do as much damage, if not more. So now we creep out and it's time to go toe to toe. Our sacrificial effort right at the end, switching on radar as well to make sure we spot the Fletcher as we come around, and here I'm going to rip into them as much as possible with high explosive and go for that crack and kill. Nothing special about this one, it's just simply going down fighting. Something I love to do as we pick up the Confederate achievement and we continue to go in. Now, you know, I'm not over speeding into the Fletcher, because the idea is if they throw torpedoes my way, albeit I don't have a hydroacoustic search available, perhaps I'm not going to sail directly into the path of the torpedoes, or I can just change my angle at the right time in order to avoid the torpedoes that they've been fired directly at my ship. And we're going to see a set of torpedoes coming in very shortly, and these we're going to avoid. And with the enemy Fletcher falling, we pick up our Kraken. In return, the next set of torpedoes have been aimed appropriately, we over-angle the ship, and we go down. Time for the post-game stats. So an unfortunate defeat, but at least we went down fighting. And for it, our battle performance amounted to a total damage output of 182,349 HP, and along the way we picked up 2 heroic achievements. Firstly, the Confederate for damage at least 6 enemy ships, where damage caused to each ship must exceed 20% of their normal health pool, and the one that everybody wants, the Kraken Unleashed, for destroying 5 or more enemy ships in a single battle. Coming on to the team scores, we can see that we topped our team in terms of base experience earned, picking up 1,711. In terms of our role in this game, our main role was to take Objective Charlie by a rather aggressive push, forcing back the enemy team that tried to take Charlie, and in return overextending my position from the rest of my teammates, who decided to hold back primarily on the northern side of Charlie until the main engagement had concluded. This meant I had to sacrifice a lot of health in the process, and because I misread my team's intentions, it meant that when the enemy Bismarck decided to push around, I traded off a lot of health when I could have perhaps angled against them more appropriately, and even had the front of my ship pointing towards them, as they would not have been able to overmatch my bow, were it being 27mm, and their guns only being 380mm. Instead, I prevented an angled rear broadside to the enemy Bismarck, lost a lot of health, and that meant that my role over the course of the rest of the game began to diminish, to the point that I had to sit towards the back of my team in the final quarter, which due to lack of range on my guns meant I could no longer contribute towards my team's efforts, and instead in the final quarter I had to be selfish and simply try and get as much damage out of the game as I could for my own ship. Going down fighting, but at the same time perhaps, under different circumstances and reading into the game a little bit earlier on, I could have actually helped turn this around with the assistance of my team. Coming on to our detailed report, we have one key item to note here, and that's the total damage we received, 83,978 HP. Now with ships that have a heal, in general I like to emphasise the fact that you should always try to get the most out of your heal consumables. And with the Des Moines being able to equip 4 heals with the Superintendent Captain skill and premium consumables, and the healing flags added to the ship, that means you have a potential and maximum health pool of 84,536 HP, not including the Survivability Expert Captain skill at Tier 3. So to translate the damage you received into a percentage relative to this total potential health pool, we managed to extend our health pool up to 99.3% of the potential maximum, meaning that we tried to make the most out of our heal, and I would definitely say we did so, and that meant we were able to stay in the fight for the longest period possible until we finally went down. And finally, coming on to credits and experience, we can see that after additions and deductions, we walked away with 373,500 silver credits and 21,745 commander experience. To conclude, hopefully today's gameplay has provided a key contrast with the gameplay demonstrated earlier this week, in that whilst the DPM orientated build for the Des Moines can be extremely powerful, it does run a higher risk factor. In that in certain circumstances, as in our push towards Objective Charlie today, it can feel as though you are forced to go all in, and whilst the results can be good, the return on your ship can be devastating in the amount of health you are going to trade. And if you do not have your team closely supporting you, this can mean that you'll feel isolated and the amount of focus you receive from the enemy team will build. And in turn, as the game goes on, you start to lose that ability to influence on a personal level the outcome of the game, because you no longer have the health pool to trade in favour of your aggression. And that's what we found at the end of this game. In the end, we were forced to an auxiliary role towards the rear of our fleet, but with the lack of range in our guns because of the DPM orientation of our build, we did not have that ability to continuously rain down fire at extended range, having to get closer and closer, or alternatively just be a waste to our team's chances of winning the match. So one could say here that it was a push too far. And so I've been TX141, and if you have enjoyed this video, why not leave a like, comment or subscribe for future World of Warships videos on my channel. And as always, if you're looking to get into World of Warships today, I strongly recommend it, ladies and gentlemen. It's an absolutely fantastic game, and one I've thoroughly enjoyed for multiple years now. Feel free to do so, sign up for free, using the link in the description of this video. Otherwise, until next time, as always, ladies and gentlemen, take care and fair seas.